Recently, two seemingly unrelated signals that came to us just a few days apart indicated how Greenland is playing an increasingly important role in contemporary geopolitics. Before we reveal the whole story, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. One of the messages could indicate that the United States would soon send additional troops, aircraft, and other military hardware to Greenland, while the other suggests that China's expanding and ostensibly semi-secret Arctic ambitions need to be looked at more closely. First, a telegram arrived from the Thule Air Base, which is located very high in western northern Greenland. Since the 1950s, the U.S. Air Force has been in charge of this base, and it continues to be a vital facility in the defense of the American heartland. In particular, it offers early warning of potential nuclear missiles from Russia, North Korea, and China, and because of its impressive array of antennas that gather intelligence from military satellites and transmit it to the U.S. Last year, I visited for a few days and came away with the distinct impression that the area's isolation had long since duped me. The base's isolation does not lessen its significance, on the opposite. The significance of the base is directly related to its proximity to the nations on the opposite side of the Arctic Ocean. U.S. Undersecretary of Defense for Policy John Rood signed a declaration of intent to invest in dual-use military and civilian infrastructure on September 16, while visiting Thule Air Base. The statement was quickly announced to the public through Facebook by the U.S. Embassy in Copenhagen. The message stated, "The U.S. acknowledges the increasing importance of the Arctic in light of global developments. The objectives of this statement of intent are to increase the operational flexibility and situational awareness of the U.S. military through investments in Greenland." The U.S. Department of Defense aims to strongly explore any prospective strategic investments, such as those involving Greenland's airport infrastructure that may have both civil and military advantages. With these improvements, the U.S. and NATO's capabilities in the North Atlantic region would be improved. It was a message that seemed clear, but was actually very hazy, leaving more questions than it addressed. It was impossible for common people to understand, for example, if it meant that the United States Air Force will soon expand past Thule Air Base and construct more airports for fighter jets and bombers in Greenland. Although it may be interpreted in that way, the phrase left no doubt for the uninformed. Is Greenland's own intention to build new airports causing the U.S. Air Force any concern? Or was the message actually intended to convey that China's engagement in Greenland is not tolerated by the United States? Keep a sharp lookout. The timing of John Rood's declaration of intent was extremely important. New airports in Greenland are the subject of a dispute between Denmark and that country right now. The Self-Rule Administration in Nuuk, Naalakkersuisut, aims to develop a new airport in the south and expand the airports in Ilulissat, the primary tourist destination in Greenland, as well as Nuuk, the capital. One of the 5 firms already qualified for the construction is a Chinese enterprise, China Communications Construction Enterprise. Denmark is concerned that China's participation may put Greenland in a difficult financial trap and jeopardize its security. Danish Prime Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen has volunteered to contribute $100 million and acquire low-interest loans in order to prevent China from getting involved. This would significantly lessen Greenland's financial load and render Chinese cash, and perhaps also CCCC's entrepreneurial talents, obsolete. The government in Nuuk was forced to resign as a result of this offer because one of the coalition's parties feared increased Danish dominance in Greenland. The majority of press accounts connected John Rood's message, which arrived in the midst of this conversation, to the extremely recent Danish-Greenlandic debate. Finally, Henrik Breitenbach, director of the Center for Military Studies at the University of Copenhagen and one of Denmark's top security analysts, provided a more academic interpretation of John Rood's message. Even if the U.S. would undoubtedly share Denmark's distaste for Chinese participation in Greenland, the U.S. announcement had less to do with the local issue, according to his analysis. He wrote in Weekend Avisen. Instead, it is best to interpret the American message as reflecting a very real shift in American military goals. The defense of the continent of North America is a growing area of military priority for the United States. It represents a change in the U.S. overall approach to engagement abroad. According to Breitenbach, this change will result in less emphasis on the fight against terror in North Africa and the Middle East, and more emphasis on the Atlantic and the Pacific, as well as on Russia, China, and other countries with the potential to directly harm the United States, such as Iran and North Korea. This implies, according to Breitenbach, that Greenland's northern region, in particular, will once more assume a significant role in terms of international security. Decision-makers in Copenhagen and Nuuk should keep their eyes peeled and follow events very closely, he wrote. He recalled that in 2011, the U.S. Navy disbanded the Second Fleet, which played a crucial role during the Second World War. The responsibility for defending the northeastern United States and all waterways up to the North Pole has lately been delegated to this Second Fleet, which has recently been given new life. Breitenbach further stated that the U.S. Air Force would very likely decide to fortify its oversight of Russian submarines in the North Atlantic and its defense of Thule Air Base soon. He asserted that this is how we should interpret John Rood's message. He argued that it might result in a significant buildup of American military, specifically aerial capabilities in Greenland. Even temporary deployment of a small number of modern fighter planes will require very substantial operational and logistical support structures with people and material on the ground due to the difficult circumstances and great distances. It would be on a scale not seen since the end of the Cold War. China is also on its way. Anne-Marie Brady visited Denmark and spoke at Copenhagen Business School a few days after John Rood's presentation. One of the most renowned China specialists in the world, Anne-Marie Brady is a professor at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand and a fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington. She has spent the last 30 years researching China's party-state structure as well as its polar aspirations, the first book to ever thoroughly investigate in one sitting China's Arctic and Antarctic strategies, public statements, hidden policies, polar budgets and investments, concrete polar expeditions and activities, was published by the author in 2017 under the title China as a Polar Great Nation, which is incredibly detailed and well documented. According to Anne-Marie Brady's interpretation, China views the poles the same way it views the world's oceans and space, as strategic boundaries that will determine the course of history and the extent of human dominion. China has researched other superpowers. A great power will be able to dominate the high seas, as John F. Kennedy said. And China has added the polar regions and the cyber realm as additional key territories that no one currently owns. China is enlarging itself in places where there is space for growth and where it truly depends on whether you have the capacity, people resources, and financial means to do so, she told me. She emphasizes numerous times how official Chinese statements and documents that are written in English and intended for a foreign audience frequently reveal only the positive, while China's true intentions, underlying strategies and priorities are either kept secret or are only accessible to those who are fluent in Chinese. A crucial tool in the party-state system is information management. In order to establish a good China policy, countries like Denmark and Greenland must look beyond what is presented to them in English and into the Chinese discourse. When China explains to its own population why it is investing so much money in a territory outside of China, the discourse will be very different from that used to explain China's policy to foreigners, especially in sensitive and developing policy areas like the Arctic, she said. China's national security, including its economic and military security, natural resources required for China's continued growth and stability, and science and technology required for China's quest to become a leading world power, according to the author of the book. In order to conduct climate research and other natural sciences, China is quickly building science stations in the Antarctic and the Arctic. However, the country is also preparing for resource extraction and developing its defense capabilities, including its satellite-based Beidou system, which is comparable to the U.S. GPS network. China does not want to be reliant on a system that the United States governs. Therefore, it has established ground reception facilities in the Arctic regions of Sweden, Norway, and Svalbard, with more on the way. On October 22, China and Iceland will inaugurate a collaborative research facility in northern Iceland. China also has plans for a ground reception facility in the center of Greenland and for a sizable research facility elsewhere in Greenland. What do you think about the whole matter? Tell us in the comments and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.